Swim check 1, 2. Bike check 1, 2. Run check 1, 2. I think we're ready. Let's try this. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast, a podcast where we explore the sport of triathlon from a variety of perspectives to help beginner triathletes on their journey. I am your host, Mashonda Shines. Well, welcome back to another edition of Try Beginner's Luck. I am hoping that you are loving the little bit of reprieve you can get at this podcast because we are intentionally being the transition area during the season so that we can still share good stories. And despite what may be happening around us, we still have to take care of ourselves. And sometimes that means swimming, biking, and running, which we call in our space triathlon. And so during this time, this is a space where you can decompress, but we're not going to distract. We're not turning a blind eye to reality, but we are choosing not to let it drain our battery. We're going to control the controllables. We can't fix the whole world at once, but we can control our effort, our kindness, and our community. And we're going to continue to fuel the fire. I'm here to provide information that helps you cross your personal finish lines, regardless of what may be happening on the sidelines. I'm committed to that. And I do know not everyone can listen to the news 24/7. And so Try Beginner's Luck hopefully is that filler space for you. And today, I am so thrilled about my next guest. I actually got to participate as the MC for the 5th annual Pacers Black History 5K. And at that 5K, Elise Brainer said, "Hey, I need you to meet someone. They just did a Winter Olympics." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So today I get to be joined by an advocate, an athlete, and a guide who embodies resilience, reinvention, and a deep commitment to accessibility in sport. Her athletic roots began in the water as a Division I collegiate swimmer, laying the foundation for a life defined by endurance and determination. After a career-ending back injury, including a double disc replacement and spinal fusion, she didn't step away from sport. She imagined her relationship to it. Just 1 year and 10 months after major spinal surgery, she completed Ironman 70.3 Maine. That's a testament to grit and purposeful recovery. From there, her passion for inclusion took flight. She became a Paralympic triathlon guide for visually impaired athletes, lending her strength and skill to help others chase their performance goals. But she didn't stop there. She qualified both as a guide and as an individual athlete for USA Paratriathlon, and most recently finished her first Winter Triathlon and earned a spot at the World Championships. What? Yes. She is deeply committed to the growth of sport itself. She's an advocate for Winter Triathlon recognition as an Olympic sport, and she works to expand volunteer opportunities for paratriathlon guides so more visibility and visually impaired athletes can pursue the sport with support, dignity, and joy. Today, I get to welcome Farrin Saba to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast. From surgery to Ironman, the transformative power of guiding a paratriathlon and her vision for a more inclusive future in sport. Farrin, welcome to Try Beginner's Luck. How you doing today?
Hi, thank you. You make me sound way cooler than I am.
Oh, you're very cool. When Elise was like, "You have to meet her," I was like, "Okay." I trust Elise and I trust who she's introducing me to. And I had no idea that you were just coming off uh, Winter Nationals in Lake Placid, which was so amazing. Let's start right there because we're in the grunt of winter, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know many people who do winter triathlon. Tell us what it is because it's a little different than the regular triathlon, and
Mhm.
what drew you to winter tri.
It's hard to say that I do winter try. That was actually my first time doing a winter try at nationals. Um, One of the Saucony reps for the DC DMV area does winter try, and he came to our store during one of the social runs. And he had previously qualified for winter try. He grew up in upstate New York, and I went to school in upstate New York. And so I was like, I'm used to the snow. I can do this. Um, and I just like love trying new things and wanted to give it a go. There was no real goal in mind. I just wanted to try something new, and it was really fun. It was very cold, but it was really fun.
Well, you're right. This is your first of many winter, because I mean, you can't not do it, not going to Worlds. So you have to continue to do it in some capacity. But I appreciate that. Like, we never know who we are surrounded by in the sport, whether we are on that social run and just being able to talk to people. And that's why community is so important. And so, going to school in upstate New York, you're like, I'm used to this. Tell us what the race was about and take us through the different sports because I don't think, at least I don't know everything that's involved in a winter triathlon. And so I'm sure there's somebody in the audience that may not. So, what is the first event?
So it's running. So unlike summer or just normal triathlon, where you start with your swim, you actually start with your run in a winter triathlon. And there's very varying distances. But this at nationals, we did 4 miles of each discipline. So it was 4 miles of a run, 4 miles of a fat tire bike, is what they call it, or mountain biking, but with a really large tire. And then the last leg of the triathlon is cross country skiing.
Okay. So, run, big fat tire bike, and
Mhm.
cross country skiing.
Yes.
Now, are you really like you're running in the snow?
Yeah, so and that's something that I had never done for like a prolonged period of time. Like DC gets snow sometimes, and so I'll just like dodge snow piles. But this was truly on snow. So you need to wear, they call them treks. They're little spikes that you can put over your shoes, and they're metal, so they dig into the snow. It's kind of like running on sand, feels kind of similar if you've ever done this. That sort of tactile feeling is very similar. Um, but it's a little bit easier than the sand, but harder than running on the grass or the road.
Hmm.
It's like trail running with like a little bit of slipperiness.
Okay. And so, how did you train for that being here in DC? Because we did get some snow, but I don't know if it was around Snow Creek time that winter triathlon happened and that helped to prepare you, or where did you have to go to try to get the preparation you needed to run the 4 miles in snow?
To be honest, I just like believed in myself. I didn't really train. I mean, I trained, I was running on the treadmill, outside, wherever I could. Um, but I I don't know. I just like if you know how to run, you can figure it out while you're doing it. It is difficult to run uphill on snow, and that was quite a hilly course. And going downhill too, you have to be worried about your safety. Make sure you don't hit other runners and stuff because you can slip inside. But all you can think about is that if you do fall, you fall in the snow. So it's not really that painful. And so you can take solace in that and try and take risks. And yeah.
So, what risks did you take?
Um, I think by just trying running normally on the snow, like looking at where you need to place your foot, or kind of dodging like little holes in the snow that are made by other runners. That's something that you don't really think about when you're running on the
Mm.
pavement or on the track or, on the trail. Like learning how to sort of navigate the terrain of snow was a completely different feeling. And so I think going fast in those scary places are like always a risk. Um, but you kind of just have to think about, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? I fall in the snow. No big deal. I've done that as a kid, like playing in the snow. And so I think sometimes that's a really good mindset to have is like, what's the worst that can happen? You fall in the snow, and that's no big deal. And you can always take it slow if you're, worried.
4 mile run done. I'm curious, did they have aid stations out there?
No, no
No.
aid stations whatsoever. So when you go through the transition area, you're allowed to like have gels or water bottles. You can even put them on your bike. Um, but there's no aid stations that I know of at Winter Tri ever, I don't think, just because it is kind of an underfunded like sport, and they do have volunteers out there making sure people don't get lost on the trail, making sure that you make it up the hills okay on like a bike in the snow, because you're in a pretty like remote forest usually.
You think?
So yeah, so they do a good job of making sure you're safe, but in terms of like nutrition, you're on your own.
Okay. So let's talk about this fat tire escapade through the forest. Do you own a fat tire bike or did you
I
have to rent
do.
one? Like, how did you get comfortable riding it? I guess you're saying it's only 4 miles, but if it's in Lake Placid, I would imagine it's kind of hilly. So let's
Oh
talk
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, it's certainly very hilly. And it ended up being the same course as the run course. So you'd already seen it running, but I had never ridden on a fat tire bike. I don't have one. I have a normal tri bike and a normal road bike. Um, and going up the hills, you have to actually let some air out of your tire so that it has more grip on the snow to get up the hills. Um, it's it's like riding in quicksand is the best way to describe it. Snow really slows down your tires and it makes it hard to move or navigate, maneuver around like the snow. So going uphill, you go a lot slower than you think you will. So it's really important that when you do have a downhill, controllably, you get some speed. Um, and I think downhill actually is a lot scarier than going uphill. Just because it's like when you drive your car and you are on like a lot of snow, um, you have some maneuverability, but there's some aspect of, being not able to control your vehicle. And that's the same thing with being on a bike and going downhill, especially surrounded by other riders. So you just have to, take those calculated risks. And it's okay to get off your bike. I learned that there were a lot of like seasoned veterans. There was this bridge that you had to go under, and it was like covered with ice and not snow, and it was just made of wood. And so, that's when I like got off my bike and I walked, and then you can hop back on. So you're not going to get disqualified for hopping off your bike, especially if it's like a safety issue. And I found that kind of interesting because you never do that in regular tri, really, that much.
Mm.
So,
Okay. This is so fascinating to me. I've never, it's like one of those things where you wish it could be televised so you can see it in action to imagine what it's like. And
Hmm.
so right now we're all living vicariously through your story. So thank you for sharing like the details about the ice on the bridge and getting off your bike, etc. So cross country skiing, I hear that's a fantastic workout, number one. Number two, it's kind of similar to walking or running just on like a track
Hmm.
ish. So it's like an elliptical.
Yeah, so there's actually many different styles of cross-country skiing, and we kind of got a glimpse of that in the Winter Olympics that just happened. Um, all those cross-country skiers, first of all, are incredible, and I feel like they have the highest VO2 max of any athlete, um, is what recent studies have shown. So they, have a great efficient heart and oxygen system. um, their bodies are truly like a well-oiled machine.
Hmm.
Um, cross-country skiing is like, I would say, a mix between trail running, ice skating, and running. Just because you glide, so you have to really have that balance, and you're kind of on one foot or the other. Um, and you're going uphill too, which most people think skiing is only downhill. But um, imagine having skis and having to run up the hill, so it makes it a lot harder. There's things called V1 and V2, which is like a formation that your skis form to get up the hill. Um, or you can do classic, which is kind of that thing that you were saying, like walking almost, like trekking up the hill, almost like a hiking situation.
Hmm.
Um, and you get to choose which one you do in the race based off of your experience level, or which one's easier for you, or which one's kind of makes you faster. So I chose to do classic just because I haven't really been on cross country skis that often. I've only done it twice in my life before doing it at nationals, um, and just went with the style that I thought I could handle. But it is faster to do V1 or V2 or V3, which is that kind of like skating style where your skis are like this and you're moving kind of like when you're on ice skates.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's a crazy difficult sport, but it's really fun once you feel safe doing
That's a nice caveat. Once you feel
it.
safe doing it. Okay. So we have to feel safe first and then we try. Well, clearly you did the opposite, but I love the fact that you took that risk and you tried something very different and now you get to try again for Worlds. Where is Worlds? What was it like when you learned that you qualified?
So this year Worlds was in Padula, Italy. I think it's going to be in Italy again next year based off of recent trends. But I just about 2 weeks ago emailed the US coordination team, and they don't have an exact place yet. I think people are still vying for slots, to say, hey, come to our country. And but it has been in the US before, so maybe it'll be here next year. Um, I hope it's somewhere that I haven't been, because I would really love to meet other athletes from other countries and just see a new place. But I think that's one of the coolest things about this sport, is that it can take you and allow you to learn about other cultures and places. So yeah, I would be really excited if it was in Italy again, but I don't know. And it was really exciting qualifying. It's been a long time since I've like achieved something tangible in a sport. It's been about 10 years since I've really done some like medal damage in a sport. So it felt really good, and um, yeah, it was just cool to be introduced to a group of people that are so welcoming. not all sports are like that. And I think this one's a very welcoming community. And they just want people to learn about it and get interested in it and try it. So I think that was the probably the best part about learning that I qualified for Worlds.
I'm glad that you said that about doing some metal damage because you are a very decorated Division 1 collegiate swimmer. And so coming from being on the highs of highs to experiencing some really low lows, I can see why this resonates. But I want to talk about the journey of having the back surgery and the need for it, and then coming into your tri story. So could you take us backwards a little bit and kind of share a little bit about your swim story into having back surgery?
Yeah, for sure. I started swimming like when I was 9 years old, and everybody that has ever been a swimmer or knows swimming or likes swimming knows that it's a really repetitive sport. It's one of the most repetitive sports on your joints and um, everyone thinks it's, low impact and which it is, in small doses. But when you do it, 4 to 6 hours a day, um, it can really, wear and tear. A lot of swimmers have the classic rotator cuff surgery or back surgery by the time they're done finishing collegiate swimming. Um, all of my friends that ended up from the US team that ended up in collegiate swimming, one of my best friends who went to Duke had 4 shoulder surgeries. So, what my experience is not, unfortunately, uncommon. Um, I did have surgery, but so did a lot of other swimmers. So I'm not alone. And yeah, my junior year in college, I ruptured 2 discs in my lumbar spine. So my L5, S1 and my L4, L5 were pretty damaged, meaning I had there's like squishy parts in between your vertebrae, and one of them just completely collapsed like toothpaste. Um, and so I could not really feel like my legs, and I was pretty numb to the touch. And so, like, it's pretty demoralizing going from being like a really strong sense of self, like knowing that you're a good athlete and it's really a part of your identity. And it really like fuels your confidence in other areas of your life to, having to be taken to the bathroom by your parents or like walked to, um, different doctor's appointments and like sitting in a wheelchair. Um, I always like really took pride in being physically capable and doing whatever I could with my body because my little brother has a physical disability. And so, it was always a point that I never took for granted and wanted to always, sort of stretch those limits and show him that he could do the same thing. Um, and so when it happened, I really lost a lot of that sense of identity and didn't really want to go in the water. I didn't touch the water for like 3 years. Um, it was almost like traumatic in a way. I was a backstroker, so I was always bending my back. Um, and I said one day, after surgery, I realized that like, it's such a blessing and a pleasure to like be able to move your body. And after 6 months of surgery, I was able to like lift more than 10 pounds and start walking again. Um, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm cleared to run, I'm just gonna like try a new sport. And maybe that'll get me in the water because it feels different than just swimming. And you're swimming in open water, and it's just a completely different sport. So I think try kind of like saved me in a way because I was able to sort of conceptualize sport in a very different way just because it was fun and I wanted to have fun.
You know, I love you wanting to engage in sport again and trying, like you said, a different way of engaging with swimming and how triathlon helped to save you because so many people triathlon has saved in so many different ways. And so it is truly, it's a gift. You know, it's a gift that we get to do it. And so I'm glad that you saw um, this as a way to re-engage with your former self, but just in a better version of you. And so I'm curious, was 70.3 Maine your very first triathlon ever?
Yes, it was, which
Oh,
is
so
crazy.
we go big or go home. This isn't, we don't just start. Okay, sure, I'm going to try a sprint and just see how I like it. Let's talk about that because you just come off of some major surgery and you go straight for a 70.3. What was that like? Because you just started to regain a lot of different senses of mobility. Take us through that.
It was a year and 10 months after my second back surgery. Um, and at 6 months after surgery, I was like, okay, I'm cleared to run. I'm cleared to lift more than 10 pounds. I just started being able to they call it the BLTs, not the sandwich, but like bend, lift, or twist. I was able to do that. Um, and so I don't know. I just wanted to see like what I could do. And it had been around like the year mark when I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a 70.3. I was like, I know how to swim. I'm gonna learn how to bike. I'd never really, biked in a race before. Um, and I was like, I know how to run. And I did it for conditioning all the time in college. So um like let me just give this a try. And I just love trying something new. I love traveling. Um it was like a fun trip for the family. Like everyone came. So I thought it would be more of like an experience than thinking about it more of as like a sport. It was just like a fun challenge to try. And then I got really hooked after I finished it. I was like, I would just want to keep doing this. Um, so yeah.
So is after you've completed Main 70.3, is that when you transition to being a guide?
Yes. So actually, um, when did I become a guide? Maybe like 3 or 4 months after that, I met, I lead Pacers social runs. And at the time, I was working at the Arlington store. And a visually impaired athlete walked in the store and was waiting for Run Club. And he did not have a guide to guide him through the social run. And he was like a little stressed out. Um, People were trying to figure out who could like safely guide him. And, we had talked about he walked in with an Achilles hat. And I knew that Achilles is this sort of international organization that helps visually impaired athletes to match and pair with guides. Um, and I had been on one of their runs and sort of tried my hand at it, but only once. And so I offered to guide him. I went through the training process like about a week or two beforehand. And it was really fun, and we sort of developed a friendship. Um, and then he was like, so I'm going to this camp in about like a month or so. Um, and I don't really have anybody to guide me. My guide dropped out. Um, and it turned out that this little camp was a USA triathlon development camp. So with all the USA coaches, paratriathlon does like a yearly camp or multiple times a year camp to develop athletes that they think are going to be viable for the Paralympics. And he was like, "Will you come with me to North Carolina?" And I was like, "Sure." So I asked Elise and my Pacers people if I was able to travel with him and take off some work, and I did for a week, and it was crazy. It was so fun, but that was really my first experience guiding all three sports was at USA Triathlon Camp because his guide had dropped out. And I just said yes.
Mm.
So
Uh, I'm kind of stunned. Like your very first time guiding is at USA Triathlon Paralympics Development Camp. Your first
mhm.
triathlon was a couple of months prior with Maine 70.3. What's now roaming through your mind about like this sport? We didn't even get to get into like what was your first swim like being in a more competitive cycle, your first bike and your first run, which we still need to handle. But now I'm just in awe that your power of yes has allowed you to experience so much and selflessly to help others.
I just I think the sport of tri has brought me to so many friendships and new experiences. Um, I was saying yes to a friend, not really like saying yes to just, this camp. I wanted to help support him and ended up just loving the sport more and understanding more about the sport through that experience. But it was just, more of about the human side of triathlon and like how there's so many facets to the sport. Um, and I wanted to be a part of all of it. I wanted to experience all of it. Um, and so saying yes is like very easy when you think about it in that way. Um, So I was like, I'm capable. I can do all of the things with my body. So I might as well, help someone else who really has a shot and is great at the sport and established and, has dreams and goals. And I'll learn about the sport that way. Um, just because I think it's probably one of the best ways to learn triathlon is doing it with someone else besides somebody else who's already very, he really taught me how to sort of learn the sport and the mentality of the sport. Um, it didn't come from the 70.3. It definitely came from camp and guiding and going to Achilles workouts. Um, and they have them here in DC. So anybody can really guide. You don't have to be fast. They have athletes of all different ages and levels. Um, so,
I love that. So I want to try to go back to find out what your first race was like, because that's, why we were here. But
yeah.
then I'm interested to find out what you learned in greater detail. So let's go back to Maine 70.3. This is your first swim in a competitive format, a little different than
Mhm.
the pool. But
Mhm.
what was that like, allowing your body to hit the open water? I don't know if it's a body of, if it's a lake or if it's a
It
river
was
up
a
there.
river. Yeah.
It's a river.
Mhm.
But what was that like for you?
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It was a little chilly, but it was in the middle of the summer. So, cold wasn't really a factor. It was more crowded than I expected. Like there's a lot of people. I I put myself at the front of the line because I knew, what I was capable of in terms of the swim. Um, and people are pretty aggressive. Like it's not like the pool where you have your nice little lane
Mm-hmm.
and your own. personalized space basically in the pool. This is kind of like, I don't know, there's a lot going on in the water, especially when you're in a body of water that is murky, like you can't see anything else around you. It's not like a clear lake or a freshwater pond or something like that. Um, yeah, so that was very different, but I loved it. It definitely brought that competitive edge inside me like back. Um, and I liked that tries start with swimming because it that's like my comfort zone, or so I found out. And then everything else, I was like, okay, I finished the swim. I can do everything else. If I could finish that, one thing. So, and it's also the shortest, leg of any race. So I think swimming is a really good thing to start off with for tries. I think one of the most surprising things about the swim was you have to like climb out of the water in various ways. And so sometimes with like paratriathlon, when you're tethered to somebody, learning how to like climb out of the sand or climb out of the water with somebody else is difficult. But for this 70.3, I think I had a really good entryway to that mindset. And it was like learning how to climb like kind of through the rocks on the bottom of the river to get out of the water and then running uphill. I didn't realize that running was also a part of the swim, like to get to the transition area. So, yeah,
Okay.
that was my first swim. That was so fun.
And you realized some new things with the transition, but then what was the biking like? Because you said you had to teach yourself how to bike or to bike in a racing format, and you went from 0 to 56.
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
different. That's a
Very
whole
different.
different, getting your AV system prepared and,
Yeah.
comfort. Tell us about that.
So I just my first 70.3, I used like a normal road bike. Wasn't a specialized like tri bike or anything like that. I feel like anybody can use their road bike or I've even heard of people using like a single speed on like flat 70.3s. So I just used my road bike. So it wasn't too much of a learning curve, but I think the endurance and like clipping in was probably the most scary part
Mhm.
of learning how to ride in a tri. I would like when I was first starting to learn how to ride my bike and clipping in, I fell into a bush like on the side of like a sidewalk in Ballston in Arlington. And this like older man, I like didn't want to hit him, so I just fell into the bush and he like ended up looking back and pulling me out of the bush. So it was definitely 0 to 56. I like had no idea what I was doing. But then I got the hang of it and I started riding on like the W and OD trail. And there's no real like stoplights. So it was nice to sort of get my bearings when I didn't have to start and stop so many times in the city. So I quickly realized that like city riding is for the advanced and like you build up to that. But yeah, I know I fell a lot.
It's a real thing, especially when you're trying to clip in, like falling is a part of the process.
Yeah.
So you did your 56 miles and then you run your marathon, and being a part of Pacers, I'm sure that running has become like second nature to you. So how was your first half after doing the 56-mile bike and the 1.2-mile swim?
Oh my gosh, I was really tired. And I didn't anticipate being exhausted, but I also really loved it. It was at that time in the day, 70.3 start really early. So by the time you get to the run, it's full daylight, like you're, kind of getting to the heat of the day. So I didn't anticipate that either. It was getting pretty hot. Um, and I learned about nutrition on that run pretty well. Like I learned to take gels. In previous half marathons that I had run, I didn't really take nutrition. So triathlon actually introduced me to like this is how you fuel your body because you're going for so long. Um, but yeah, it was a decently hilly course. I think it was about like 400 or 500 feet of elevation for a half marathon, which isn't flat, but it isn't like extremely hilly either. Um, yeah, everybody was like smiling and so happy. Um, and I was like, this is a different breed of person. This is wild. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I liked it, but it was definitely difficult.
I love how you're like, this is a different breed. They're still smiling at the end of this. What is going on? Whatever. And it's true. People are really, you know, truly joyful when they're out there trying. I mean, yes, in the moment you could be experiencing different painful or intense sensations, but overall people are typically generally happier. Now let's go back to the guide because I'm really just zoning on that. What are some key things that you learned with your guide that taught you more about the sport that allowed you to become better?
Well, I learned that there was so much more than 70.3 in triathlon. I thought that that was like sort of the Ironman races or like sort of the pinnacle of triathlon. And because I was so new to the sport, I didn't really know anything else. Um, and, the athletes that I was guiding, the athletes that I was around at camp, sort of opened my eyes to this world of sprint try and Olympic try and the training that goes into that. Everybody thinks of triathlon as this like endurance sport, but we were doing so much sort of technique and sprinting, um, and communicating. um, and so, like, being able to sort of like speak out exactly what you're doing and having to speak out exactly what you're doing to communicate with somebody else while you're doing it side by side so that they don't fall or so that, they're telling you, um, what they want out of the effort, um, taught me sort of how to think about pacing myself and like what steps I should be taking to sort of conserve energy or um yeah, the sport took on like a whole new lens and it was so much more meaningful alongside somebody else. It's just like a lot more fun to do triathlon next to somebody else because you don't really think of the sport as being like a team sport, but I think guiding really makes it a team sport, and I missed that. Like training can be very lonely as an endurance athlete. Um, DC was just recently voted like one of the loneliest cities, and I think one way for young people to really connect to their city is by volunteering and guiding or doing a sport alongside somebody else. And I did a lot of like my professional public health work in that space, like learning about loneliness and sort of how to tackle that from like a policy perspective. But you can do that just by doing your sport. And so yeah, that's kind of what I learned from guiding so far. I'm sure there's much more to learn, but
Much more to learn means we're still in here guiding. What are your plans for guiding this year? And are you going to do both, do a couple of races guiding, but then also do a couple of individual races for yourself?
um so this year I will hopefully be guiding. I don't know if I'll be guiding triathlon. I might just be guiding running this year. Um, I will be at US Summer Nationals for sprint triathlon individually. Last year, I was there as a guide. Um, and I actually, we didn't get to compete last year at USA Nationals because there was like a large storm that went through um, the sort of the course, and it was flooded and it was just like unsafe for athletes. So hopefully I'll be able to go back again and guide. But this year for triathlon, I'm focused on sprint tri on my own. But I will be guiding and running with athletes throughout the year, just not at USA Nationals this year.
How cool. How cool is that to it's cool and disappointing at the same time. Like it's cool that you were able to get there to be able to guide an athlete on the nation stage for triathlon, but then also that storm which I was in was it was different. You know, seeing it happen in real time, the rain, the dark clouds covering, it was bananas.
Yeah.
Um it was a wild moment. Like seeing the aftermath of the pictures and being in it was just like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. Like I knew I was heading to the airport because I had to go to Minneapolis. And I saw the clouds and I was like, yeah, they're not going to let us fly out today. It's like you just knew. You saw planes circling. Like you could see planes on the app just circling because they couldn't land. They were just trying to wait for the storm to end and had to be diverted to Chicago because they were losing gas. Like it was mayhem. And so hopefully this year you will be able to get back and experience it this year. For those who are interested in guides, what are the criteria? Because you said that you don't have to be super fast to be a
Yeah.
guide. So what would you do if you wanted, or what is the criteria if someone wanted to guide and have been nervous that they weren't fast enough to guide? What would you tell them are some of the things that they can do, and where would you direct them to go?
Yeah, you certainly don't have to be a super speedy or experienced to guide. You just really have to have a willingness, I think, and comfortability of riding on your own and running on your own and swimming on your own. But other than that, other than doing a try yourself, I think you just have to have the willingness to want to do it with somebody else and be very communicative. There's a few really easy ways to sort of dip your toe into the guiding water. You could Achilles offers like an online training, and it took me like an hour to do. Um, and then you show up to their runs. Um, and you can, guide athletes that have been guided by many other people before. And so they kind of teach you how to guide um, in a way. And that's really fun. And we have an Achilles chapter here in DC, and they always meet, I believe, on 7th Street and on Saturdays. And I think once during the week, sometimes it's Wednesdays or Tuesdays. And there are other like smaller, lesser known ways to guide too. There's biking groups that do guiding in Shirlington, in Arlington Village. Um, and yeah, it's a great way also to learn how to ride a tandem bike too. So like when you guide on the bike, you're sitting in front and somebody else is the visually impaired athlete is sitting in the back. Um, and you work as a team to sort of navigate and use the bike. And so joining these little like lesser known groups sometimes is a really good way to to dip your toe into the guiding water, and it's really fun and you make friends and uh, you just kind of see the sport in a whole new way. I think it's much more fun.
All right. So if you are hearing this, wherever you are in the world, check in to see where there might be adaptive athletes who are looking for guides. In the United States, Achilles is definitely a large organization that does that. I think there's Ansley's Angels, and various others. So definitely check that out. And um, as we just learned by Farrin, you just might be surprised on what you learn as a result of that. Well, Farrin, this has been so good to chat with you and to learn from you. And you're still, I would say, still in that new phase of triathlon. And I love that you started at 70.3, but realized, wait a minute, there's more to triathlon than this. And you're taking a step back to explore the sprint and to really see what you can do with that. And so that to me is absolutely incredible. And it shows like you really have some vision for yourself and where you want to go in this sport and how I feel like you want to conquer each distance. And as you say, what was that you said about metal, do some metal damage? I can see it. I see it. You're like, oh, okay, now I understand. I've been taught by my guide. I, I got some plans for triathlon. I can see it all over you, and I am excited to see that explored. What would you tell your 70.3 self? Because that was just maybe a couple of years ago. Now that you are a little bit more settled in sport, about the sport of triathlon.
That there's so much more to triathlon than, Ironman events or 70.3s. Um, and there's so much more like to discover, and it's really fun. So try it all. Try every distance. Um, Try to say yes, to any opportunity that comes your way to like move your body. I always think like one of the funniest things I've ever heard in the tri sport is like why be really good at one sport when you can be mediocre at three? And I really think that that's what kind of hooked me into the sport. Is like it's really fun to be not amazing at everything, at every single discipline, because it always gives you something to look forward to and something to learn, and it keeps the sport really interesting. And you don't have to be, amazing or fast or confident at all of them. Um, because that's just more to work on, and it keeps you engaged and hooked in the sport. So that's what I would say.
I love it. Well, we don't let anyone leave here without answering some rapid fire questions. And so we're going to
Okay.
get right into it. And then guess what we'll get to do? Start our work day because we got up early in this morning to make this happen. So let's get after it, Farron. Um, oh, these are good. Let's see. You mentioned earlier that endurance sport taught you how to fuel yourself, which is surprising to me because when you swim, I feel like you want to keep fueling so that you can keep going. Um, so do you prefer real food or gels when you're fueling?
Gels because they're fast and I can kind of breathe through them.
Okay,
I don't like chewing. I feel like I will choke.
fair. What's your favorite recovery snack?
Um, like a simple like smoothie or like banana and almond butter with yogurt.
Mm, that sounds good. Most underrated part of triathlon.
Um, I think the start of a swim, especially open water start, just because like usually it's at like sunrise, and so you see these incredible views, and I don't know, that can get somebody hooked immediately, I think.
So, speaking of morning views, are you a morning person training or do you like evening sessions?
I like both, but I tend to be more energetic in the morning.
Same. What song is on repeat before a race?
Mm, that's hard. I love so, oh my gosh, so many things. Like I constantly listen to music, so this is really difficult. Um, I would say anything like mm, anything early 2000s R&B and rap. I just like love.
Very
But
different genres for sure.
yeah,
2000s rock and R&B.
rap and R&B.
Rap and R&B. I was like, rock? Ooh, that's so different, but that makes sense now. So we're back in the same family. Like, let me make
No.
sure I heard that correctly. That's different. Um, Finish line feeling in one word.
Mm, excited for food.
Several words, but okay. And we don't let anyone leave the podcast before answering this. Do you pee on the bike or get off and take a proper pee break?
I have peed on a 70.3 bike, but not short, not anything shorter than that.
Okay. I love it. Thank you so much, Farrin Saba, for joining us today. We have this saying on Try Beginners, like whenever you try, you always win. And we proved to be that true. And clearly we heard that through the fabric of Farrin's story. She's like, I just tried it. It's my first time. I'm just going to try it. Because why not try? Like trying new things, you never know what you might love and what you might love more. It's no hate in that. It's just a love more type situation. If you love this podcast, be sure to share it with someone that you love because you want them to try or you want them to just hear how amazing our podcast is. Um, we're on all your major platforms, including Substack, so be sure to join us there. I think that's it for us. We got to go get our day started. So, my name is Mashonda Miles, also known as Mashonda Shines. And for today, peace. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. We need your help so we can continue to try at TBL. So for more information on where you can find and subscribe to this podcast, visit www.trybeginnersluck.com. And don't forget, whenever you try Beginner's Luck, you always win.